So also ensuring that the text is readable in all conditions, right? So let me say, for example, I'll still demo some things, right, so that it won't look like I'm talking and you're not getting what I mean, right? So um some of the things that the body that ensures that what's it called, accessibility guideline is being is is uh is followed. They call it POR POR POUR POR, right? So that's like the four pillars to accessibility, uh accessibility compliance, right? So I would explain what that POR means, and I'll also go into details on how does this really concern me as a front end developer as to, okay, what can I do to ensure that a website is compliant to all accessibility standard, right? So the first accessibility, like I said, is the POR is the core principle, the POR. The P stands for perceivable, right? So user must be able to perceive a content, whether in text or color contrast. Right. Like I said, this this guideline interfaces between both a designer and a developer, right? So it won't be wrong if a developer also knows how a design is. You should be able to critique a design and say, okay, this design, the color contrast we are using as regard with in relation to the text is not compliant. For example, you are having a yellow background with a red text, right? So that's not perceivable content really, because it's difficult for those with visual impairments to be able to read. Survey shows that content with maybe white background and a black text, which is like the normal uh, inter, uh, blank blank templates, right, is more compliant, 100% compliant to all accessibility strength. So users must be able to perceive a content, ensuring that, okay, they can be able to read and understand that this is what this thing means, right? So the other principle is called operable, right? Operable. So you have POUR. P stands for perceivable, O stands for operable. Operable means interfaces must be usable with possibly a keyboard, right, or a screen reader. It's possible. While I believe in old times where maybe there were no use of frameworks like React or Vue or Angular, uh, where people write vanilla JS and HTML, pure HTML and CSS, which some people still write, there's a way you can not know that keyboard or screen readers is not enabled, right, on your HTML tag or where it's needed to be enabled, right? So why this is because, like I said, a website that like that involves scrolling, right? It's not just one page website. You have different sections, right? It should be the interface should be able to use a keyboard, right? And where there's also content, right? It should also have enablement for screen reader, right? The other the other principle, which is you says understandable. Um, Understandable means content should be clear. That's like the word implies, right? So it should be clear and easy to it conveys the actual meaning of what it implies, right? So um the other one that is the last, which is R, robust, right? So you should also work across different devices, right? This is where things like responsiveness, um, also enablement for other devices, because people that are visually impaired use devices that enables them to be able to visualize websites, right? So these things are abstracted. And what do I mean by abstracted? In the sense that You don't need to worry so much about maybe implementing a feature that would that would um, that would do that, right? It's just making sure that you are aware and you can be able to test it, right? So certain frameworks like React or Vue or whatever you're using, uh, they have things that they have guidelines or principles, right, that you should follow. That, for example, like I'm sure you are not new to the term called SEO, search engine optimization. If you are new to what they call SEO, SEO means search engine optimization. So, for example, you want to search through a website, and um, the keywords or you choose search, for example, maybe you search a particular product on Google search, right? While maybe Jumia or Konga or whatever will come up as ranking is because they have strong search engine optimization based upon the keywords they have content inside. So what really ensures that SEO performance or relevance is the fact that there are certain things the engineers, the product designers, they've done over time that they are compliant to when they are writing code. The use of alt text when necessary for images, the use of alt tags to product 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 article descriptions, using those descriptions very very necessary. The keywords that people would search for or the particular thing. And someone can just type a brief description. Okay, I need a distance. Maybe might not know the name, right? But the reason why maybe Amazon or Jumia, for example, would maybe recommend that particular product is because they've seen that keyword being used that is relevant to that product, right? So I don't want to go deep into SEO because it's not SEO. So I'm just giving you an example of what like making sure that this works across different devices also mean in terms of ensuring that you are following those guidelines, right? So I would let me dive into the practical tips, right, for accessibility for front-end engineers, right? So when first I'll say maybe text and content accessibility, right? When you're using semantic HTML, right? The reason why maybe your first lessons that you are learning HTML, you are being forced to use um some specific tags, right? Maybe for example, you want to have a nav bar, you should use nav tag, right? Because I know that this is a nav tag, right? Or for example, you want to have a form. You want to have a form, you should use a form tag. You want to create an article that has content on which you can possibly use maybe different subtext of maybe H1, H2, H3, or 4. Then you should put it in an article tag, right? So using semantic HTML, right? For those that really develop with, if you are possibly developing with pure HTML, CSS, JavaScript, those things help accessibility, content accessibility. So screen readers knows if, for example, because HTML is really flexible, is not HTML, CSS is flexible. What I mean that you can create a button with a div, right? All you just need to do is to add interaction to the div and a container styling and make it look like a button, right? But while you won't be able to access maybe possible inline styles that has come in the button, but you can redesign something. You can choose not to use a nav tag if you want to create a navigation menu, right? Which is also something that HTML gives you room for. But when we are taking cognizance of accessibility as how the browser interprets it or how screen readers interpret it, it's usually best to use the semantic HTML when necessary, right? Using button when necessary, using the button tag when necessary, right? Using the nav tag when necessary, using forms when necessary. Another thing I would also say is about content accessibility, content and text. is providing like alt text for images, which I mentioned, right? So every image tag or every uh, text tag has room for, especially images have room for alt text, right? What that alt text or is just possibly giving you a description, is a short description, right? What that image is doing, right? So aside this having content accessibility, it also helps SEO, right? To if you check some e-commerce sites, the alt text can be as a long sentence, or it can even have different alt text describing this particular product. That's why, because they're just trying to give a very good description, SEO relevance to that product, so that anybody that searches or the image can give can convey what it means, right? So another thing I would say about web and text and content accessibility was using proper heading structure, right? You shouldn't use. I know you could use some can use H1, which is like the first the biggest text to the list, H to H6, right? So using them where appropriate, right? uh, you know that maybe it's a sub content, you have an header, use H1 or H2 where necessary. You have a very small submenu text under that, probably use H5 or H6 when necessary, right? Now, these things, right, are also things that a designer, right, that is compliant to WCAG, that's Web Content Accessibility Guideline. WCAG would also you collaborate with to ensure that what you're doing as a developer, right, also like improves this or is compliant to this guideline. So another thing about using text and content accessibility is using colors to convey their meaning. Right? What do I mean? Right? For example, we all know that green means maybe go, or green is a positive is a positive or a success meaning, right? You shouldn't be using green and it's conveying maybe a an error, a form validation error, or maybe a something that has to do with maybe delete, right? So the reason why you should use a color that convey the meaning. That is why this thing is an intersection between what a designer should know and what a developer should know, right? So a designer should know obviously that when you are conveying errors, right? Oftentimes you use red. I've seen a design where somebody wants to design on a mobile app. You're designing. Do you want to exit now? The modal is showing yellow, right? It should be red or maybe cancel, right? So there shouldn't be a misuse of colors that convey their meaning. Apparently by mindset, right? Our mind is kind of configured to know what colors mean in a website without even knowing in detail. For example, you can see something that possibly has already shown you a red dialog box, right? Even without reading the text, you already know what that thing is trying to convey, right? But for example, if that thing is saying, um, uh, let me give an example. Maybe, I'm trying to think for a very, yes, maybe for example, you are on your mobile app and you are maybe on your Piggyvest app and you you want to possibly delete your account. And there is another notification in modal that says, "Are you sure you want to delete your account?" And it's showing green, right? Without you even possibly wanting to read the text, it shouldn't be showing you green because that green is like a go ahead, like okay, it's a positive thing, right? The reason why it will show you the interface of the color should be something that, are you sure you want to do this, right? Or are you sure you want to delete your account? Right? It shows you red, showing you that okay, this is something that you should maybe quote unquote danger. Are you sure you want to do this? So using color to convey their meaning, right, is one of the things I feel like text and content accessibility is very necessary. Now for keyboard navigation, right? Because I mentioned that earlier. When, for example, a website, you should be able to um scroll on your button, use the buttons if you are using a PC, right? Obviously, to scroll up and down and scrolls, right? Reason for this is because not everybody is can access it, has that. They are using some are using tools like screen readers, right? To enable them to be able to scroll. So where you see, for example, area labeled by all those things, they are for screen readers. That is why I said you don't need to worry much about how this thing is being done. There are already things that are there. This is just making you aware that this is what this thing means, right? So ensuring all elements are keyboard accessible. For example, using tab indexed wisely when necessary, right? You can be jotting this thing down. Obviously, I'm sure for those people that have not, I'm sure you must have heard of using when you're here, possibly in your header on your HTML, you are seeing area label by, area described by, right? Those things are for screen readers, right? So also for focus management on keyboard, there's also what they call um skip links, right? So, for example, a website, I think some people did it on their portfolio site or some assignments we were given, where you can you have a nav, you have a website that has a nav menu, and you have home, about us, uh, our team, contact us, then that. So that website could just be a one-page website where about us. Once you click on the About Us menu, it goes to the section where it needs to go. That is why it is good to use the appropriate HTML, semantic HTML tag, right? If you are using vanilla HTML and CSS, right? So you implementing skip links to skip to content, right? I think this is done with href, right? So href, the content where the content is, right, or the section where the content is, it also helps focus management, right? When necessary. Um, I don't want to go into deep details about color, contracts, guidelines. Those things are more of a designer thing, right? That a designer would definitely know to ensure that it's the section that what they are designing is compliant to web accessibility or web accessibility guidelines. Right. So I mentioned about responsiveness, right? Responsive and adaptive design, which obviously I feel like many people would know, right? Using relative units, right? I think for a front-end developer, you should know about relative units as against pixels, right? I don't know how far your knowledge of um front-end styling is like, because I know that when you start, you are possibly styling things, units of text, or unit of layout, or unit of elements. You're possibly using pixels, right? It's usually best to use relative units, which is rem and em, right? Because it's more easier for different adaptive or different responsive screen sizes, right? Because why that? Because a lot of people don't know. I can have if you are using pixel, right? I can have a monitor, because I have a monitor that is maybe 40 inches, and I want my screen, my website, I reduce the percentage of because you can reduce it if you use command minus, you reduce the width or you reduce the size of the website. By that time, if you are using pixels, it's kind of displaces where you are possibly whatever you pixelated, right? It's not according to structure. But if you are using relative units, right, without any relative relative desktop screen sizes, it will always be the same, right? So if you don't know about using relative units, go to W3 schools, start knowing how to use relative units where necessary, right? So I talked about forms, right, and input. So forms and inputs, using label elements for all inputs is very important. Don't just write, create a form and create the button, the form inputs. So using label, using placeholders into input elements helps clarity, right? Which is also following the four principles I explained, and also like the error messages with helpful text, right? Clear error messages with helpful text, right? Don't just say, for example, you want to log in to a to a portal, maybe a login screen, and uh, if the login fails, you just say unable to log in or invalid this thing. So the reason why it's good to say, okay, incorrect password or email not found, or the combination of email and password is incorrect. Let's just say unable to log in, invalid, or possibly. And most times, if you are getting responses from an API, the messages that are being is left for you to be able to change that response. So if for example, if that endpoint is returning for an invalid, unable to log in, right, or 401, right, unauthorized, you should, and maybe what the API message response is return is uh um uh, uh unauthorized, right? So it's just like what it means, unauthorized. So you shouldn't be returning unauthorized. You shouldn't be returning unauthorized to the user. You should customize the response message. Be like, okay, invalid password, or email or password is incorrect, right? That's most times the case in that kind of scenario. So I think that's for that. There's also um in your browser, just like the way you inspect, maybe you are developing, you are designing, you're developing your interfaces, and you want to inspect just the way you inspect. I think for Windows is Command Shift I, right? You want to inspect your HTML, the styling, the JavaScript on console, the network tab. You can also inspect accessibility. I'll show after before I round up my discussion, right? I'll show you how you could how you could even see performance of your website and if the accessibility score of it. So there is also a room where you can in the Chrome Dev Tools that you can check in the accessibility, right, to know if how accessible your website is in terms of accessibility score, right? So it will help even know, okay, where do I need to improve on, right? Just like the same way you write your, just like the same way you write your HTML, CSS, and you check your web browser if is you check your styling and on the Chrome browser, I mean on the Chrome Dev Tools to know if is what is possibly what you want or what is designed, right? So there's also a way to check accessibility guidelines on the website on Chrome Dev Tools, right? I'll show that in a minute, right? So I think the question will be, I'll say I'll give one for questions, right? Like questions regarding how front-end engineers should ensure their accessibility standard guidelines are being adhered to, right? So I know a lot of you guys possibly are framework expert or tools experts. You're possibly using um, uh, React, you're using Vue.js, you're using Svelte, right? Or all this, they call it single page frameworks, right? Single page application frameworks. So uh, practicality in terms of if you are using those tools, right? Is also is not is not different from what I've also said in terms of using semantic HTML. So avoiding to use div for everything. Yeah, I know that a lot of people might not want to use HTML tags for everything, but ensuring a accessibility standard is being added to, maybe you are using React. Some of you use UI frameworks like Bootstrap, React Bootstrap, Material UI, Shardcn, a couple of them. There are tons of them, right? They have components, right? They have components that maybe you want to. They also give you room to be able to use HTML, JSX elements, right? But so using the semantic HTML still also helps to improve uh accessibility, adhere to accessibility standard, right? So avoid div for everything. So use buttons for buttons, right? Use label for label, use input for input. Some can be like, oh no, I don't want to use input, I just want to have a div and customize my inputs. And yeah, actually I've worked with such people, but it's just good. Why this is because screen readers automatically, to be honest, a browser doesn't understand React as React, right? It has to be bundled as JS, right? So whatever React components you're developing in terms of how you're passing props, how you architect your React application, the browser doesn't really care about that. What it cares about is what is bundled where with whatever Babel or Webpack you use to bundle your application, and the browser possibly just understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? That's is being compiled. So using those things helps screen readers automatically understand what your native HTML is, right? So I also mentioned using alt text for non-text content, right? That's mostly why alt text is alt tag is needed. So for images, right? A product image, e-commerce sites can must have this to rather ensure the their website is compliant and also SEO wise. So, for example, if you maybe some of you can possibly know how to use WordPress, right? WordPress is a content management system that also you can use it to build websites without coding hands-on, right? Using templates or whatnot. Uh, it has a tool or plugin for e-commerce sites which is called WooCommerce, right? Which I've also used before. Uh, if you are ensuring, if you don't know these things, right? If, for example, you're uploading products to the catalog menu, the catalog or products page or section, and you're not adding alt text to the images, it won't be SEO. It will be SEO efficient, effective, or relevant once somebody is possibly searching for that product, and you might have it on your website. Aside that, those are one of the many things that makes the website SEO performant, right? But this is one of it, right? Having alt text, non-text content. So a product that is a sneakers, right? Maybe it's red. You can just describe it as red Nike sneakers as the alt tag, right? For the same also applies for icons and SVGs, right? I know that a lot of people use SVGs for icons, right? For icons and whatnot, logos, right? Uh, using area label, right? Uh, area label, maybe for example, an image area label close, right? It also means like okay, the title is closed, right? So is I think for SVGs, you have avoid to use alt, right? It's usually good to use area label because it's a way the browser interprets SVG. Because if you know SVG, this is scale vector graphics, right? Is you can actually post your SVG to your website and it shows you, right? Because it has its own tag, SVG tag. So these are things that one should know in terms of whatever if you are using any front end framework like React or Vue or whatever. Um, there's also I think I'd like to talk about UI elements usable with keyboard. I don't know if some people are React Native. If you have a background in React Native or React, well, kind of the same, right? React Native has um defined functions for keyboard and gestures, right? So for apps, right, they have that, right, where you can define gestures for something, certain things, right, or define how a keyboard input, a keyboard event will happen for a particular input, right? That might not be something you know for a front end React person, right? You need to define it. So, for example, um, if you want to ensure all actions are keyboard accessible, yeah, like I said, you use button instead of div. When you create a button with on-click event listener and possibly the function to handle the on-click event, then there's something called on key down, right? Maybe you want to make the keyboard focusable, right? So on key down, those are also things that are part of making the keyboard focusable for elements, right? So I don't know. These are things that you might want to read on maybe their documentation to know that okay, you can also do this, right? Some don't know that you can do that. Like for example, I mentioned React Native. If you don't have a background with React Native, right, you might not know what I'm saying. But certain gestures that you can do on your mobile apps where you can swipe, they are not happenstance, right? It was developed on the code base, right? Like for example, let me see. The reason why you can possibly pull to refresh something. Maybe you want to refresh your feed on Twitter, you want to refresh Instagram feed, or you want to swipe to archive a particular chat on on maybe WhatsApp or Telegram, right? It was something that was already developed by the developer, right? It was catered for. That event was catered for. So in turn also, you can also cater for that in websites. Apparently, yes, you can. So um um what are the other things I could say concerning accessibility also? I mentioned part of uh the four principles, which is POUR, you understandable. So content must be predictable and easy to navigate, right? So um for example, I've seen scenarios um where navigation menus are displaced, right? So for consistent navigation and layout, that's why I said a designer should ensure that his designs are also compliant in terms of all these principles for web accessibility standard, right? So keeping your navigation menus should be in the same place, avoiding um, avoiding what's it called? Avoiding unexpected behaviors. For example, uh, you you are in a form, you are in a stepper. I don't know if you know what a stepper is. For example, you want to register for something. The first step, you have a first step. Once you navigate to the next step, there's another form set of forms you have to fill. So after filling the first, you go to the second one, you fill the second one. After filling the second one, you go to the next step, fill the third or last one. If the person automatically refreshes the browser, right, there should be a way the forms are not refreshed, are not reset rather. Or if you want to go back to the previous step, right? I don't know if you know what a stepper is. That's what they call it in design convention. You shouldn't be that you go back to the previous form and it's empty. You have to refill it. So those are things that avoiding unexpected behaviors. These are things that as a developer, as you grow, there are things that you know that you should have. React happens to have that such. You can have you can have a state where you can have there's something called Redox toolkit that you can use to save state on different steps, right? I don't want to go into different I mean into implementation details, but those are things that are like on the eye level, ensuring that we have a consistent navigation and layout, right? So I also mentioned about um, helpful error messages and clear error messages. Um, so using the right error message for the right distance, don't just provide something that is vague. For example, uh, error, error. What is the error about, right? Is it an invalid email for maybe for a login, invalid email address, or maybe um like so maybe an input for validation for email, right? Email must have an act. You can even go ahead for that to have a validation to not just any email. Someone can just be at their name. Meanwhile, maybe that validation fails because there's not such domain as your chat, your name.com. So they are valid email platforms, right? There's a way to check it, even if it's a private domain or a public one like Gmail or Yahoo Mail or whatever, right? So having the right messages displayed, not just error, maybe invalid error email address. Kindly provide the correct email address, right? Those are things that um, things that can help you um, be that a developer needs to put in place when ensuring that whatever they are doing is WCAG compliant, right? So that's like the short form for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So so I think before I show how to check if the accessibility guideline of the website, I think I'll maybe um I'll take I'll take questions right now. Possibly I'll just share my screen and explain how you can know these things and check the website, how accessible it is, right? So any question?
Hi guys, do we have any questions? You can just drop your question in the chat box, raise your hand, and let us know if you have any questions. So, any question? I'm not seeing any message in the chat box. Would you want to go ahead or you're done talking? Can you all hear me? It should not be like the last time that everybody was not hearing me.
Yes, I think I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, are you done or you still want to? I don't know. I don't think they have
Yes,
questions. So please
if
go
there's
ahead.
no question, I can just show what I want to show, present demo what I want to demo.
Oh, all right, all right. I think you can just go ahead with the demo, sir. Oh, okay. Sorry. Kendi has his hand raised.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Kendi, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Ayomitide, good afternoon too. Thank you, sir,
Yeah,
for the session. Okay. The question I want to ask, along the while I was taking the course, so while using image tag, there is this place where we have alternate text or alt to describe the image that is being used. So I remember Per was talking about writing a description of the image, and it shouldn't be too long, or it was just talking about describing the image for screen readers as well, so which you also mentioned. But I now noticed while I was using my VS Code and I tried to use the image tag, I have a different option like image SRC, and um, aside the image source, I also have some other. I'm not with my laptop. I would have tried to show it. So I want to ask that we ignore the if we ignore the ALT, if we did not put anything, or if what we put there is not really descriptive of the image that is being uploaded, is there a way it's going to affect the job? I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. That's all, right?
Yeah, that's all. That's all.
Okay,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Well, if you choose like some of these options or attributes, like you mentioned, they are optional, right? They are not required. Um, but why for this topic, right? It's just to um let you know reasons for some certain things, right? So this as a developer, right, you shouldn't at the first step, you might just want to create something that is functional, meaning something that displays what is meant to display, something that is responsive, it meets the business goal. But there's certain things that if you don't know, right, a particular, for example, the reason for this particular topic is to let you know that your website is not just being, if you are developing a site that is needs to be accessed by all kind of people, even with people with disability that are using certain helps or screen readers and all of those things, it's usually difficult for the browser to interpret because it's whatever what you see is what you get according to the browser. What you give the browser, is what users get, right? So it's not going to assume for you. It's not going to assume or be able to auto detect, right? So it's usually good. It's not a by force thing, but it's usually good. It's just um um it's just adhering to certain standards that will help other people to be able to interface with your website, right? So not including it doesn't mean that if you don't include it on your HTML tag, whatever, it's still going to work, right? But is it going to be able to be accessible by for screen readers for these other browsers or people that are using it that want to use it that you are not aware of, right? So you're just making sure that whatever you're doing is compliant across different things, right? The reason, for example, when you started developing website and you only knew that it's desktop, right? Because you are using your PC, right? And before mobile phones became a thing, right? Uh, the whole body that is behind web W3 consultant that is behind web guidelines and all of those things. They needed to ensure that okay, we need to create room for all that different screen sizes. Imagine if you are just like, okay, I'm developing for websites. I'm only developing for desktop. I don't really care about people that are accessing it on the mobile phone. You just cater for those that are in desktop. Now, people that are using it on the mobile phone won't be able to interface with your website accurately if it's not responsive, right? So the reason why you eventually start and you grow to know, okay, you have to ensure that your website is responsive, is to be able to ensure that okay, all other users can be able because 80% of people that visit websites is known that is possibly by mobile phones, right? Which is why every front-end developer, every front-end design has to be responsive across different screen sizes, majorly mobile first, right? So the same way it is also making these guidelines is usually good to adhere to these things, right? Because of several reasons. Even see, I mentioned reason about SEO, which is not even particularly about, it's not about web CAG guideline, but it's something that helps it, right? So there's like an intersection. So it's good, right, to ensure that you ensure this is put in place. Descriptive alt text when necessary helps the web browser understand. Yeah, so I think I've answered the question. Okay. Are there any other questions before I proceed?
All right, there's none in the chat box, so I think you can proceed. And
Okay.
I think you can
I
proceed.
All right. Okay. So for example, let me open Amazon. Let me close this. So if I go to Amazon, um, Amazon, obviously, I know we all know Amazon. It's just similar to Jumia, but Amazon in terms of SEO ranks much more worldwide compared to um, Jumia, right? So if I'm to, for example, you go to more tools, developer tools. For a Windows system is Command Shift I, right? I mean Control Shift I. Um, so there's something. This is where you possibly see, okay, if this is responsive across different screen sizes. Uh, Elements, console, source, network tab, performance, application. So now you see there is something called Lighthouse. Now, this Lighthouse report is
Sorry,
on.
I'm not seeing your screen. Oh. I don't know if you are.
Can everybody see my screen?
I
Okay,
can see
that's
your
it.
screen.
Sorry.
Yes, your screen is visible. I can see
No,
your
no, no,
screen.
no, no. Uh-huh.
All right, Moshood,
You
I
Wow.
just have
think
to
you can
pin to where
leave
I'm
the call and
presenting.
join back. That works
Yeah,
too.
maybe it's my network. Okay, I can see now. Thank you. I can see.
Okay.
It is showing now.
All
All
right,
right.
great. So we have this, right? This is Chrome browser. So you go to Lighthouse, generate a report on, for example, performance, accessibility, best practices. Now, this accessibility is what we are talking about. And the best SEO is kind of different, but accessibility performance, right? When I click on analyze, it's going to take some time to analyze. Okay. Now, this is what he calculated on Amazon's report. Accessibility 83%, best practices 57, SEO 85. This performance there is based on we are not talking about performance, but there are certain criteria that our performance is being audited, right? Uh, I'm not sure if Chrome does a good job in detecting performance, but there are tools that does a good job in terms of performance of a website. What do I mean by performance? How, for example, once you load a website, what's like the average time it takes to load the first FCP, which is like the first content paint, right? There's some websites you visit, it takes almost like 5-7 seconds before all the content loads of 2 seconds so it's advisable if very efficient performance websites. You can use Google Page Insights. If I'm to use Google Page Insight, page speed, to know if Amazon's performance is good, I'll just go here. Yeah. So the first FC is 1.1, which is very good, right? Good mobile and desktop. So these are tools that you can know, but accessibility 83%, which is very good, right? In terms of how accessible it is. So these are details of where the accessibility is. The area attributes, some are not matching. Okay, it's giving you why some things. So things we talked about image element do not have alt attributes. Some things are not having alt attributes. That's why it's incorrect. Not all, but it will give you where and how you can improve it. Video elements contain a track element with this, blah blah blah. Uh, so here is where you can be able to um, check and um, benchmark how accessible your site is, and it will also give you tips on how to improve them. Right. So I think that's the best I can do. Trying to open Jumia here, but I don't know if Jumia has changed their websites. I don't know why this is showing, but so I don't know if did we get this? Hello.
Hi guys, do we get this? We need your response. Sorry.
Yeah, I get it.
And I would also share where you can read about this accessibility. I know you might be taking some courses. This is a place where it kind of describes, if you have the time, all the principle, how to adhere to them. It's called it's on w3.org. You can check that out to know more about what I've shared, right? In terms, it has everything. I cannot capture everything in one sitting, right? But this is like the Wikipedia of the web accessibility guidelines. So you can browse this and check. So if there is no question, I think I'll call it a day. Joy, are you there?
Yes, yeah, sure. I'm with you. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Because I believe I'm audible, because I can hear myself.
Sorry, somebody said,
So does
let me quickly put
anybody?
the website again. Someone said it's not
Oh, all right.
accessible. Aha, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'll send you a detailed one so you can go. Mostly version 2.
I would also copy it and so that we can all have it on the WhatsApp group chat. I think I went here is a big thing to doing that for your website. And I'm sure get it for everyone. So thank you for your time.
The, your
Yeah.
voice is breaking.
Okay, let's see what I can do. Is it better now?
Yes, I think. Yeah.
All right. All right. So I was just trying to say thank you. Don't worry, my village people are after me today, but it's all well and good. So I was just really saying thank you, a very big thank you to Ayomi today for this beautiful session. I mean, it's one that would help everybody to really do a very great job with their mobile app project. I really look forward to seeing everybody's mobile app project. We'll be having a review on it next week Friday with another of our mentors, and we do look forward to having another beautiful session with Ayomitide. So, I mean, I think we can call it a day. Thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, Ayomitide, for being a very, very awesome mentor. Anytime we reach out to you, you're always answering. So, thank you very much. We really, really appreciate it. So, I think we can now call it a day. Oh, Ayomitide, you want to say something?
No, nothing. I think that's fine.
All right. All right. So, thank you guys for joining. To have a very beautiful weekend and happy new month. I realize I didn't wish anyone happy new month. So bye guys. Um we'll see each other later.